Everyone's always arguing what's healthy, and there are a lot of things you could do to your health. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. So in this video, I'm going to give you the ultimate health tier list. I'm going to rank 100 of health activities from worst to best. We'll start with Zone 2 cardio. And Zone 2 cardio is obviously something that has become quite popular on social media over the last few years. It's one of those types of, exercise that a lot of athletes are also doing. The reason athletes do a lot of Zone 2 is because it's low injury, low stress. You can recover from it fast, and you can do it for many hours without overtraining. So that's the reason why athletes do especially a lot of Zone 2 training. 80% of their training is Zone 2. And I do think that Zone 2 has a lot of its benefits, but as an average person who has, let's say, limited time, there's only so much Zone 2 that you can do to really fully get the benefits, so to say. So if you have limited time, then high-intensity interval training or something like that is going to be, more mandatory for VO2 max benefits. As an athlete, Zone 2 is more appropriate. If you have a lot more time, you like Zone 2, then you can, definitely do it. I would put it in the good tier. It definitely is a God tier in terms of the health benefits you get. It has a lot of benefits of mitochondrial biogenesis, mitochondrial function. It's low stress, as I said. You can recover from it fast. It just takes a lot of time. So that's why I wouldn't put it in the God tier, as that everyone should do it. If you have the time, and then I definitely recommend that you do it. I like Zone 2, but I'm going to put it in the good tier because it's not an inherently mandatory part if you are doing some other form of high-intensity interval training. Moving on with napping. So I do think napping has evidence for health benefits. So people often might think that napping is bad for you, that you might stay up during the night if you take a nap in the afternoon. Yes, some people might end up doing that, but there's a lot of evidence that people who take naps, they have lower heart disease, lower mortality, etc. Now, of course, it could be just people who take naps. They follow some other healthier lifestyles. They take the time to take a nap, etc., rather than just grinding through with caffeine or something like that. But napping, I think, is a good way to ensure that you're not sleep deprived. So most people are probably missing out on at least an hour of sleep, of optimal sleep for their bodies. So napping is just a way to catch up on some of the lost sleep. So, I think that everyone should nap. And it's not, again, a mandatory part. If you get adequate sleep during the night, you don't feel like you need to nap, then it's not something that you definitely need to do or everyone needs to do. But again, the same with Zone 2. I think it's a very good activity. It's very healthy. If you just feel like taking a nap, 30-minute nap in the afternoons, then that's a very positive thing for your health, especially if you tend to undersleep a little bit during the nighttime. Next up, we have walking less than 8,000 steps per day. So walking obviously is very healthy for you. Now, how much should you walk then? Well, based on the evidence, walking less than 8,000 steps per day is associated with a higher mortality risk and other adverse health outcomes compared to walking more than that. So, depends, what's the bottom? Of course, walking 7,000 steps is pretty good. It's not as good as 8,000 or 9,000, but it's better than 2,000 or 1,000 steps per day. So I'll, let's say still categorize as low amount of steps per day, less than 8,000 steps. I would consider that. And I think that it's a bad activity. You definitely want to walk more than that. So let's say walking 8,000 to 12,000 steps per day. I think that's like a God tier. So that's a bare minimum threshold for a significant reduction in all-cause mortality risk based on observational studies. And it's something that most people can pull off. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours of walking per day. So it's cumulative. It doesn't mean that you literally just walk 2 hours. It's over the course of the entire day. Your groceries, you're walking to the car, walking at your office, walking around the house, taking the dog for a walk. All these things add up in terms of steps. So 1.5 to 2 hours of steps accumulated throughout the day. I think that's a low bar effort that everyone can adhere to. And walking over 12,000 steps, I would put it in the good tier in terms of just, time investment. If you have time to walk over 12,000 steps, then yes, you definitely, would benefit from that. It is beneficial for you. If you are able to walk 16,000, 20,000 steps a day, then, all the best in terms of that. But if you're otherwise exercising as well, then it's not inherently the most important thing to aim for 12,000, 15,000, 20,000 steps per day. If you're already exercising, you're already eating a healthy diet, etc. But walking the 8 to 12,000 steps, I think, is a huge priority and a low-hanging fruit for a lot of people. Next, we have polyphasic sleep. So napping is a form of polyphasic sleeping, the siesta sleep, etc. It is a form of polyphasic sleeping. And a lot of Mediterranean countries, Japanese people, they do a lot of napping. But here I'm specifically talking about polyphasic sleep, where you specifically segment your sleep into multiple parts. So you have a 4-hour sleep segment during the night. Then you have another hour and a half long sleep in the afternoon, another nap somewhere. So kind of this more biohacker type of sleeping, where you deliberately shorten your sleep and have multiple sleeps throughout the 24-hour cycle. I've done it myself in the past. I did 100 days of everyman as polyphasic sleeping, where I slept, I think, 3.5 hours in the nighttime, and then I took 3-4 20-minute naps throughout the other waking hours. So obviously it's very difficult. Most people aren't able to do it. If you have some special short sleeper genes, then you might be able to do it. As a regular person, I think it's going to be a net negative for your overall health. In the short term, for a few weeks, maybe a few months, you'll be able to pull it off. But as a long-term strategy, I think it's definitely going to be, let's say, junk tier for overall health and longevity. For productivity or some other type of entrepreneurial goals or something like that, it might be like a god tier activity if you're able to actually pull it off. But as a regular person, in terms of health and longevity, you'll be just sacrificing your health quite a lot by doing that. Mouth breathing, so breathing through your mouth at other times other than talking or when exercising. So definitely harmful for you, especially if you're sleeping and you're breathing through the mouth. Then apnea, snoring, those things have been seen to accelerate aging and increase the risk of many conditions like hypertension, heart disease, all-cause mortality. Usually people who breathe through the mouth a lot have obesity or a very thick neck, or they have improper jawline or nasal cavities. So it's definitely, you should definitely try to address that. So try to breathe through the nose as opposed to mouth breathing. So if you are breathing through the mouth, especially children in their developing years, then it's important to fix it as fast as possible. As an adult, if you tend to breathe through the mouth, there are ways to address that as well. But, trying to make sure that you don't breathe through the mouth during the sleep, especially using mouth tape or something, mouth guards or something like that. Next, we have Soleus pushups. So essentially, these are seated calf raises when you're sitting in a car or at the office. You do these seated calf raises. And based on the research, these little short muscle contractions at the soleus, which are underneath the calf muscles, they improve your glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity. So soleus muscles are called the second heart because they help to pump the blood back up. And if you're sitting a lot, you're sedentary, then the blood can pool down in the legs, which can be harmful and bad for your health. Obviously, there's also the element of the metabolic health. So if you're just sitting, your insulin sensitivity goes down. But if you're doing the Soleus push-ups while sitting, then you're able to maintain better metabolic health during long periods of sitting. Now, I personally like the Soleus push-ups when I'm sitting at a computer. If I'm on an airplane or something like that, I'll just do these, pump out these push-ups for at least 30 minutes, an hour, depending. If you get into the habit, then you don't even notice and you just keep doing them. So whenever you are doing long periods of sitting, then use the Soleus push-up. Arguably it's a god tier supplement because it's just a low effort. You can do it for pretty much indefinitely. They don't get exhausted, the Soleus muscles, and they have a huge ROI in terms of your metabolic health. Now, the ROI is smaller if you're having someone with decent amount of muscle mass and very good metabolic health, then the ROI isn't going to be that high. But for the person who just spends a lot of time sitting, it's going to be a pretty good ROI. So I'll put it in the good tier. It's not an absolute necessity that everyone should do it. It's a good bonus hack I think everyone can do. Next up, stretching. So I'm talking about static stretching, this front splits, pancake split, touching your toes, just a static stretching to increase fluidity and nimbleness. So stretching, I think, is an important part to health. Now, if you are very stiff, then that can just lead to some injuries. You can be accidentally forced in or falling into some sort of a situation where you're not flexible enough, and that can lead to some injuries. But static stretching itself hasn't been seen to be very effective at, let's say, counteracting back pain or joint pain or those kind of things. You need to address the mobility for those specific pains. And even if you're doing static stretching, for example, before resistance training, then that can also actually increase the risk of injuries, because during resistance training, you want to be a little bit stiff. If you're doing a heavy squat, you want to be a little bit stiff. You don't want to be super flexible in that particular position. So being hyper flexible is definitely not a healthy thing, in my opinion, for long-term mobility risk and injury risk. So I'll put stretching okay. Most people probably need to stretch a little bit more. We're sitting a lot. We're not going through the full range of motion on a daily basis with our different muscle groups. But what I think is that once you've achieved a certain level of flexibility with stretching and mobility, then you can maintain that with just full range of motion of exercise. So that's why I think mobility exercises are much more valuable, and I would put them in the God tier. So doing things like a deep squat, doing things like a deep lunge, hanging, having good shoulder flexibility, good range of motion with all the compound exercises, being able to go down into the deep squat with your heels on the ground. Those are just absolute core essential human movements that you should be able to do. And these movements will also prevent future injuries, much more so than just static stretching. Yes, static stretching is good. You should, do it a little bit, but I wouldn't really prioritize it as a sport or as a physical activity. Like the dynamic mobility, dynamic kind of ranges of motion are much more valuable, in my opinion. Moving on with yoga. So kind of a similar story. Yoga incorporates both mobility and some static stretching to a certain extent. So arguably then yoga is best of both worlds, so to say. And yes, I think yoga is a very healthy thing in terms of physical activity. I think most gym bros or weightlifters or something like that should do some yoga, but at the same time, there's a saying that all the yoga people, they should also do some weightlifting, because yoga does make you a little bit more flexible and more soft in terms of the soft tissue. So again, that's not the most suitable for bracing heavier weights and preventing injuries under heavier loads. So I'd put it in the good tier, after zone 2, for example. So definitely yoga is very good physical activity, and most people will benefit from a lot. But if you just do mobility exercises, you just do like a deep squat, you don't need to go through all the specific yoga poses to have good mobility and good flexibility. You can just do the actual movements themselves, like a deep squat, a deep lunge, hanging from somewhere, etc., without going through some yoga sequence or doing some yoga workout specifically. HIIT, high intensity interval training. So let's say sprints on a bike, sprints on a hill, burpees, whatever type of HIIT training you can do, essentially getting your heart rate super elevated for a short period of time, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and then resting for an equal amount, repeated for several rounds. There's, ton of different types of HIIT training you can do, but getting your heart rate quite elevated into the zone 4, zone 5. So I think that's God tier, because it provides a stimulus to your body that you don't achieve from other types of exercises like zone 2 or yoga or walking, so to say. Absolutely, walking is very healthy for you, but HIIT provides your body a different stimulus that you're not getting from walking, which is the super high heart rate. And there are these studies as well showing that following a HIIT protocol helps to reverse the cardiac age, so the heart structure reverses more towards a younger, youthful state. Sprinting as well, God tier. So very good for maintaining speed, power, explosiveness, and fast-twitch muscle fibers are these types of muscle fibers that you use during sprinting or lifting something heavy. And these muscle fibers age faster compared to slow-twitch muscle fibers that you do in zone 2 training, for example. So that's why sprinting is, I think, a more essential type of sports activity than jogging. Plyometrics as well. So doing different kinds of jumping, broad jumps, vertical jumps, different, you see on Instagram people doing some crazy different types of plyometric exercises. You don't need to do some special plyometrics exercise like jump on the floor, do a triple black flip or a 360 kind of no scope, whatever thing. You don't need to do something like that. Just jumping up and down as high as possible. If you play like basketball, jump as high as possible. Try to do a dunk, or most people aren't able to dunk, but just try to jump as high as possible. It maintains these fast twitch muscle fibers and helps you to maintain this speed, which is a core component to counteracting aging. Older people are slow because they lose a lot of their fast twitch muscle fibers. They're very rigid in their movement. They're not able to grab a hold of things. They're not able to jump off of things. So if you're able to jump as an 80-year-old person, then that's amazing. But to have the ability to jump very high or very far as an 80-year-old person, you need to be doing some form of training for that. And sport specificity is the number one, let's say, principle of getting the results that you want. If you want to jump high, you need to train jumping high. If you want to run fast, you need to train running fast. Morning sunlight, so getting this morning UV rays of light. And I think that's a god tier, absolutely essential, because it regulates your circadian rhythms. And on my channel, I've just talked endlessly about the importance of circadian rhythms and how they control pretty much every process in the body. So having a well-functioning circadian rhythm is not only important for your mood and energy, but also for just overall biology. Essentially, your entire metabolism runs on the circadian rhythms, and it just sends the brain the right signal that it's daytime. Now, if you don't have the morning sunlight, then just use something like a bright face light or a seasonal affective disorder lamp, something like that. You just need to get some of this bright light signal in the morning to tell the brain that it's daytime. Evening sunset, so vice versa, equally as important. Maybe not as important as the morning sunset. I would say the morning sunlight is a lot more important than the evening sunset. But if you have access to both, then you should use both of them. And the evening sunset is different wavelengths of light, more these red amber lights, less bright lights, and helps with melatonin production and kind of this natural red light therapy, although you're getting a lot lower intensity of light from the sunset compared to some sort of a red light panel, because the distance is just so far. It's more for the circadian regulation compared to the other specific benefits of red light, which we can actually talk about later. Blocking out blue light, so wearing blue blocking glasses, dimming down the lights before bed, using filters on your phone, etc. Now, I personally would suggest that it's a god tier activity, because suppressing your melatonin before bed is definitely not a healthy thing for you. We know that exposure to artificial blue light at night is associated with cancer, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, Alzheimer's, etc. And people who sleep with a night light, you have some sort of a lamp in your bedroom or this kind of small blue light or whatever type of light, night lights on the floor to help you go to the bathroom or something like that during the night. Those things are also actually associated with a higher risk of poorer health outcomes. So, I personally do think that it's quite important to block out the blue light in the evening. Now, sometimes you're not able to do it. Sometimes you're traveling, you don't have your special sleeping cave. Then, it's going to be more like what you do consistently that matters. The same way with exercise. You're not able to walk 8,000 to 12,000 steps every day. You're not able to do your mobility every day. You're not able to do the morning sunlight every day. It doesn't matter. But as long as you do it the majority of times, then that's good. Red light therapy. So these are specific panels, handheld devices, etc. Now, if you're talking specifically about longevity, then there's not almost any evidence that they would make you live longer or reduce the risk of some chronic diseases or something like that. The best evidence for red light therapy is for skin anti-aging. So there's evidence that they help with wrinkles and skin elasticity and collagen synthesis, potentially hair growth, eye health. There's research on that. And there was a recent mouse study as well where chronic exposure to red light, OLED lights did reduce the plaque accumulation in these mice that had highly aggressive Alzheimer's. So maybe there is some benefits for brain health for these red light therapy devices. It's too early to say. You can't claim it at the moment. For skin health, I think it's good. Probably not like God tier that everyone needs to do it. For skin health, it is a good thing. For overall longevity, I think I would put it in the okay tier, based on the evidence that, there's no evidence that they would make animals live longer or they would reduce the risk of some chronic diseases. But as a skin aesthetic anti-aging thing, which is not the topic of this video, it would be good. But in this context, I would put it in the okay tier. Infrared light. So this is a more higher wavelength of light beyond the red light, and you do get some infrared light from the sunlight. So infrared light as a wavelength of light itself is God tier. Like, you absolutely need infrared light to thrive as a human being, to be the healthiest. If you're chronically not exposed to infrared light, you're stuck indoors under blue lights all the time, then I think you are probably like aging yourself faster and shortening your lifespan. Now, of course, there's a hormesis dose for infrared light. Too much infrared is going to be harmful. Infrared light in excessive amounts can be harmful. So I do think that it's God tier to get a moderate amount of infrared light into your life, whether that be from the sunlight, whether that be from infrared saunas, infrared blankets, infrared different devices. A lot of the red light therapy devices have added infrared setting as well. So I do think that infrared light is a God tier thing for your health. Next up, we have supplements. So obviously it depends on what supplements are we talking about. Some supplements are very good. Some supplements are kind of okay. Some supplements are bad. So, I have another tier list. I rank 100 supplements, popular supplements from worst to best. You definitely should check that out. So supplements as an overall category, for maximal longevity and extending lifespans. And most supplements aren't going to make you live to even 2-3 years longer. So I think if you follow like a very optimized supplement stack for the rest of your life, you might add a few years to your life. But they're not going to be something that just extend your lifespan by decades. I do think that they're going to be, if you have a good supplement stack, something that's based on evidence, that suits your particular goals and isn't unnecessarily risky, and with high quality sources, etc., then I would put it in the good tier. If you have like a random supplement, you just take 100 supplements per day, right? Just give me anything, I'll just take all the supplements, then I'll probably put it in the okay tier. But if you have more optimized supplement stack based on your needs, based on the evidence, and based on high quality sources, then I would put it in a good tier. It's not absolutely essential, but someone who, if you had twins, they follow identical lifestyles, identical genetics, and they're both healthy, they do all this kind of healthy stuff, but one of them is taking also like an optimized supplement stack, then I think, that twin would probably live a little bit longer. But it's not going to be a significant amount. It's not going to be 5-10 years. It's going to be less than that. Education. So this is a kind of surprising thing, right? You probably didn't expect me to talk about education, but education in the context of cognitive reserve and brain reserve. So people with a higher brain reserve and cognitive reserve, which refers to your just brain's ability to withstand aging and withstand neurodegeneration and dementia, then it is absolutely God tier. People with higher education have lower rates of dementia and Alzheimer's. So especially higher degree education, like a bachelor's degree, PhD, those things predict better cognitive reserve later in life compared to having just a high school diploma, for example. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that someone with a high school diploma wouldn't live long. A lot of this, Sardinian grandfather, etc., they didn't have a super high education, and they still lived quite a long time. So, of course, it can only take you so far. But education also in terms of educating yourself about health, educating yourself about how do you stay healthy, how do you, let's say, filter your water, how do you keep your air clean, what supplements to take, education about blood work, what I call it is called longevity intelligence, being aware about your own health, your health stats, your biomarkers, and also being able to improve them. That applies to you or your doctor. You can also have just a very good doctor who has high education and high longevity intelligence, or it could be you yourself. Me, someone else who is very interested in that. We do it as a recreational activity, kind of, that we just enjoy it. And it is a form of education, keeping your brain active and engaged itself, just learning new things, learning new information, kind of flexing your mental muscles. That increases your cognitive reserve. And the next one is problem solving. So actually trying to solve problems. Now, I'm not talking about, okay, what do we order for dinner from DoorDash or Uber Eats. It's more about, not engineering or quantum physics or something like that either. Of course, that would be like the ultimate cognitive reserve activity if you're like doing some quantum physics stuff. But problem solving, at work, different projects, trying to figure out, okay, how do we solve this particular problem here? In your own life, different problem solving is very beneficial for your cognitive reserve as well. And as long as you do it, the better it is. So doing it into your 80s, into your 70s and 90s is even better than just, retiring at 40 and not using your brain at all. Weightlifting. So obviously weightlifting is going to be God tier because there's no other way to significantly increase muscle mass, bone density, and weightlifting also has many other health benefits. As we know, muscle mass declines with age, strength declines with age. People with slightly more muscle live longer. People with slightly more strength live longer. Obviously, I'm not talking about bodybuilder type of things. I'm not talking about powerlifters. Any sport in extreme can be harmful, but here I'm just talking about recreational weightlifting, going to the gym, lifting some weights. I think that most people definitely need to do that, and it would have one of the most significant effects on their overall health. Next up, we have bilingualism. So speaking multiple languages, also one of the biggest predictors of cognitive reserve, brain reserve. If you're able to talk multiple languages, then that's very good for your brain health in the long term. Next up, sunbathing. So I'm not talking about just, getting natural sunlight. I'm not talking about walking outside with a tank top or something like that. I'm talking specifically bathing in the sun, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, a few times a week, etc. Just, let's say bathing out in the sun, trying to get a tan. I would put sunbathing, so for skin anti-aging, it's gonna be bad. So if you just sunbathe out a lot in the sun, then you are accelerating skin aging. If you just look at people in the Mediterranean countries, yes, they're healthy otherwise, but they do look older and they have like much more aged skin, more sun damaged skin, more wrinkled skin. So for skin anti-aging, it's bad. For overall health, it's good. So I'll put in an okay tier. It does have some like metabolic health benefits. Sunlight with the infrared light, red light, etc. It improves mitochondrial function. It lowers blood sugar. It improves. Recently, there's a study showing it improves systemic vision. So lowers inflammation. So it is a healthy thing for your body, but it's bad for your skin, if that makes sense. Now, of course, you can sunbathe moderately, and you don't necessarily need to sunbathe to get the health benefits. You can make all the vitamin D, you can make all the mitochondrial function needed for optimal health without sunbathing per se. I guess the sunbathing is usually done only if you just want to get a tan, essentially. But chronic sunbathing over the course of decades, it does lead to faster skin aging. Next up, tanning beds. So tanning beds where you go to the solarium to get UV light from there. It's interesting that there's not been like tanning beds that actually give you also red light, because that's what kind of counterbalances some of the harmful lights of the blue light and UV light. So just in a tanning bed in the solarium, you're just getting all these wavelengths of light that are worse for your skin. Yes, you get a tan, but they're worse for your skin aging. Now, in the winter months, let's say if you live in the north, there's no sun, then let's say a few times during the winter might be fine. But it provides also less of these metabolic benefits as actual sunlight, because you're not getting the infrared light, you're not getting red light, so it's just accelerating skin aging in most cases. So I'll put it in the junk tier, in my opinion. But ideally you would want to combine it also with the red light. Coffee and teas. So, based on observational studies, drinking coffee, drinking teas is associated with reduced cancer, heart disease, mortality, diabetes, Alzheimer's, hypertension. So, based on the observational data, then coffees and teas are one of the healthiest beverages you can drink. Now, the randomized control trials are a bit more limited. It's harder to say those claims based on the randomized control trials because there's not that many of them, and they don't usually last that long. So I personally do think that coffees and teas are, God tier, because they have mechanistic evidence showing that they're beneficial. They have observational data showing that they're beneficial, and I think that the randomized control trials also do indicate in some direction that they provide benefits. For example, coffee randomized control trials show that it helps with visceral fat and waist circumference, for example. But there are some individuals who might not react the best to coffee or teas. So with coffee, some people might get gut problems, some people get sleep problems, they get anxiety, etc. So it's very individual whether or not you can tolerate coffee or how much you can tolerate. But I would put coffees and teas still in the God tier based on all the available evidence, the totality of evidence, not like individual specific differences. All right, low carb diet. So let's say a low carb diet, not a specifically ketogenic diet or a super ultra low carb diet, but a diet that, just, restricts bread, potatoes, no fruits, maybe some berries, mostly vegetables, meats, proteins, etc., nuts, avocado, olive oil. So low carb diet excludes a lot of potentially dangerous foods. Of course, you can do a low carb diet unhealthy way. You can just eat a lot of fat bombs. You can eat a lot of butter or cream or something like that, and you can gain weight. So, there's ways you can do a low carb diet wrong. There's ways you can do a low carb diet right. But here I'll just, say, okay, you just eat meat, eggs, fish, nuts, seeds, vegetables, a little bit of berries or something like that, olive oil, etc. So, I think it's good because you just exclude a lot of potentially harmful foods. So there's no mandatory requirement for eating carbohydrates. Although, based on observational studies, then a more moderate carbohydrate intake is associated with the lowest mortality. So something like 40 to 50% of your calories as carbohydrates is associated with the lowest mortality risk in humans, pretty much across the globe in multiple studies. And a low carb diet doesn't appear to provide any unique advantages in terms of improving metabolic health or weight loss or something like that. You can achieve perfect body composition and perfect metabolic health with a high carb diet as well. It's just that, some people might prefer a low carb diet, but there's nothing, I guess, unique or magical about the low carb per se. And at the same time, there's nothing unique or magical about the carbohydrates themselves either. So I think it comes down to diet quality. People who eat moderate amounts of carbs, they might have a better diet quality. So low fat, high carb diet. So this can be a very low fat diet with a significantly higher amounts of carbohydrates. So I think that's I'll put that in a okay tier. I don't believe like a low fat diet is the most optimal. I think a moderate fat diet is probably more suitable for most people. And high carb diet isn't gonna be also like a mandatory part. As I said, it's not necessarily the carbs per se in the diet that are associated with the health benefits. Is more about, I think, the diet quality. People with a high carb diet tend to have a better diet quality. Vegan diet. So I'll put vegan diet also into here. I think it's okay. You can pull it off. Most people probably aren't going to be able to pull it off, or they're not willing to do it. But as a diet itself, I think it is okay. It can be also in the good tier depending on how you do it, depending on how you supplement it, depending on other factors. But I do think that it's okay. It's not harmful, as a lot of people like to say. It's just that, it requires a specific, a bit of more planning. A vegetarian diet, so let's say you eat eggs, dairy, and maybe fish every once in a while. So this one I would put in the good tier, just because of it does appear to be more, I guess most people tend to follow that more easily than a vegan diet, and you require less supplementation in that kind of diet plan. A carnivore diet. Now, I do think personally that a carnivore diet would not be the most optimal for longevity. I'll also put it in the bad tier, in my opinion. Obviously, there's no actual studies about a carnivore diet in the long term, but the other studies on the components of these other diets, plus coffees and teas and Mediterranean diet, etc., then there does appear to be more like beneficial effects from incorporating plant foods into your diet as opposed to being zero carb. Now, of course, it also just might be that, okay, as long as you don't eat processed foods, then it's going to be all fine. That applies to all diets. Diet isn't going to be this magical thing that is the most important thing for your health. Diet matters. Diet contributes a lot to your metabolic health and your body composition. It does so for some people more than for other people. Some people are able to eat the more processed food diet and be in perfect health. Other people just can't do it, and they need to have 100% super strict diet. And a carnivore diet is, one of the strictest diet in terms of restricting food groups. So it's a lot of psychological components as well that matter. For some people, just eliminating all other foods besides meat and eggs maybe is the way to go, and that's the only way they can achieve decent health. But it's not, there's no evidence that plants are inherently harmful. You wouldn't find it in the observational studies. The mechanistic studies wouldn't also indicate that. The randomized control trials suggest that plant diets and plant vegetable intake, etc., also favor health, generally speaking. So there's nothing in plants that would inherently shorten your lifespan. Now, if you have some autoimmune conditions, then yes, if you are getting some allergic reactions to certain plant foods, then yes, a carnivore diet might be your only bet. But a person who doesn't react to any specific foods, then it's not going to be mandatory to restrict them. Next up, we have the paleo diet. So I'll put also that in the good tier. So paleo diet is more like a caveman diet, but it's not really like a caveman diet, but it's just practically just eating meat, vegetables, tubers, fruits, berries, nuts, seeds, fish, eggs. Dairy is excluded, I think, from paleo diet, but you also exclude like potatoes, grains, and those kind of things. So is it like a decent diet? I don't think it's magical, but you just exclude a lot of potentially bad foods, like processed foods. Next up, we have calisthenics. So bodyweight exercises, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, handstands, jumping, those kind of things. I'll put it in the gut tier. I think one of the best forms of resistance training, resistance training applies to calisthenics as well. Muscle strengthening activities, I think, is one of the best forms of resistance training because you also need to be lower body weight to do it very well. So you do a lot of pull-ups, push-ups, you're not going to be very overweight. And this just push and pull between your own body weight and doing the calisthenics just keeps you humble in the sense that you're never going to really go on a really dirty bulk if you're doing calisthenics, because you're just going to get so frustrated. I used to do 10 pull-ups, now I'm able to do 6. You just want to lose the weight faster if you focus more on calisthenics. So because of that push and pull between the body weight, I think calisthenics is one of the best forms of exercises. Usually with calisthenics, you also do a lot of more repetitions. You're not doing super heavy weights. You're not doing 1 rep maxes that often. You're doing probably tens of dips, push-ups, pull-ups, which is good for your joints. It's lighter load, but because of the high amounts of reps, you can effectively build muscle. You're not going to get massively huge like a bodybuilder doing just calisthenics, which is a good thing. You don't want to become a bulky bodybuilder, but you will have a very decent physique and decent muscle definition. Mediterranean diet. So out of all diets out there, I would put the Mediterranean diet into the gut tier. That's just because of the available evidence out there suggesting that it is one of the best diets. Now, of course, you can do a low-carb diet as a Mediterranean diet. You can do a vegetarian diet as a Mediterranean diet. You can do a paleo diet as a Mediterranean diet. But the overall diet structure is Mediterranean diet is going to be the one. And the specific thing about the Mediterranean diet is that it has a higher content of these polyphenolic foods, olive oil, coffee, teas, vegetables, berries, nuts, etc., as opposed to something like a low carb diet, which you can do without any polyphenols at all. The same with vegetarian diet. So this is the differentiating factor between the Mediterranean diet and the other diets that are listed here. It has to be high polyphenols. And observational studies suggest higher polyphenol intake is better for health. Randomized control trials also suggest that. So that's why I'll put it in the gut tier. Next up, the sugar diet. So this is a popular diet out there, and it's just low protein, low fat, like close to zero fat, and just high amounts of easily consumable carbohydrates, liquid sugar, or berries or fruits, etc. Now, I personally think that it's gonna be junk tier in the long term. Over the course of decades, the sugar diet will be bad for your long-term health. Some people use it for short-term quick weight loss, which I think is not gonna be that harmful in the long term. But if you follow the sugar diet for years, then I think that will probably lead to some health problems down the line. Hydration. So here I'm talking about drinking water, adding electrolytes to your water, those kind of things. Now, I do think hydration obviously is essential for health. You need water and hydration to survive. So I'll put it into the gut tier. Now, of course, a lot of people take it too far. They just, they don't drink plain water at all, and they just drink salted water and electrolytes. They take a ton of different electrolyte powders during the day. Of course, you can take it too far. So I'll put it still in the gut tier, but just know that you don't need to always have your electrolyte satchel every morning, and you don't need to, be super neurotic about the hydration component. Smoking, so absolutely junk tier when we're talking about health. And smoking increases lung cancer, other types of cancer, dementia risk, heart disease risk, etc. So definitely not a good thing for your health. I think everyone can pretty much agree on that. Alcohol. So this is interesting. Alcohol, 0 to 1 drinks per week. So this is your either abstaining completely or just maybe having 1 drink per week. Now, personally, I drink 0 alcohol. I don't, like it, and I also think that it's not healthy for you. So I'll put it in the gut tier based on that. Now, the absolute maximum I think you can get away with is probably, like 1 drink per week. Something like a glass of wine per week or something like that. That's not going to have any significant effect on your health. Any higher amounts of alcohol will probably result in slightly worse biomarkers. So let's say 1+ drink per week. I'll put that in. So it depends on how high you go, obviously. 10 is also 1+, but it's obviously a huge difference between 2 drinks per week and 10 drinks per week. So I'll put it in okay tier. You can manage to pull it off, but it's not going to be the most optimal in my opinion. The most optimal is either the 0 or 1 drink per week. 1 glass per night. So just you have a glass of wine for dinner every night. Maybe let's say, 5 out of 7 nights per week. So I would suggest that is bad. So having some drink every night, every day is going to be more detrimental to your health. And the easy way to test that is to just look at your triglycerides and liver enzymes. If your triglycerides are slightly higher and your liver enzymes are higher, then just the alcohol isn't helping. And especially in the evening, alcohol also disrupts your sleep architecture. So you think you're sleeping, but you're really not. Vaping. So, vaping is better than regular smoking, but still in the junk tier, I think obviously provides 0 health benefits and it has significant health costs. Although the long-term data about vaping is not fully clear how much of a risk it is or if it is a risk at all. Snus, so this is a mouth tobacco. It's very popular in Europe. I think Zyn, is in US. So obviously also junk tier. You could maybe make the argument that maybe nicotine, it provides nicotine. Nicotine might have some nootropic effects, maybe some neuroprotective effects, but I think they're a bit more exaggerated the cognitive benefits of nicotine. Nicotine mostly works if you're sleep deprived or you have low cognition, similar to caffeine. Like coffee probably is a bigger nootropic than snooze. Next up, we have hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So HBOT, and these things are also becoming quite popular recently. There's evidence they help with telomere shortening, lower inflammation, help with tissue oxygenation. Medically, they're used for carbon monoxide poisoning and some wound healing. So diabetic neuropathy, they can accelerate wound healing. But in this context, I'm talking about, okay, you have a hyperbaric at your home, or you go to a clinic, you do hyperbaric for longevity benefits. I think it's okay. I think there's no significant evidence that it would have any significant health benefits. It can be bad if you do too much and you don't have any underlying health issue. It can certainly be bad. It can also be very good if you have some respiratory conditions, or you have low tissue oxygenation or something like that. It can be good, it can be bad, depending on the situation and the person, but it's not going to make you live 10 years longer or something like that. Next up, we have sauna. So saunas, I think, are god tier. So they mimic the benefits of exercise. They mimic the benefits of cardiovascular exercise, especially. And obviously, we have a ton of these observation studies from Finland showing that sauna users have lower heart disease, lower dementia, lower mortality. And sauna can also make up for lower socioeconomic status and higher inflammation and higher blood pressure. So if you are someone who has high inflammation or hypertension, doing the sauna mitigates some of the risk. And it's a better than, or it mitigates the risk to the point of not having hypertension or high inflammation and not doing the sauna. So it's a pretty powerful tool. And it might also help with sweating out some heavy metals or sweating out some other kind of air pollution, stuff like that we're exposed to nowadays a lot more. So I will put in the god tier. It's obviously harder to come by. A lot of people don't have access to the sauna, which is fine. So in that case, if I were to criticize it based on the same criteria, then I would put it in the good tier. But because I think the benefits are immense and it's minimal effort other than just getting in the sauna or finding a sauna. If you have a sauna, then it's absolute god tier in my opinion. Total plasma exchange. So this, just filtering your plasma and changing it, which with apheresis device. So also quite popular. There was a recent study in some animals or humans, I'm not actually completely clear, that it lowered the biological age score after doing this, which might make sense. You just clean out some of the blood and the plasma. I will put it in the, I don't think it's bad. So of course you can potentially be bad for you, but based on the evidence right now, it doesn't appear to be bad, but it's hard to say how big of the benefits are also going to be. So I'll put it in the okay tier. Next up, meditation. So meditation, different types of meditation practices, transcendental meditation, mindfulness meditation, loving kindness meditation, any kind of meditation. I think I'll put it in the good tier. So meditation, based on the research, has shown that might increase cognitive reserve, helps with stress, helps with just overall mindfulness, and potentially some life satisfaction. But again, it's not going to, if you just meditate and you don't exercise, right, then that's a bad thing. Like, you can skip the meditation, but I don't think you should skip the exercise, and you shouldn't skip the walking. If you just sit and meditate, it's not going to be a good thing, but it can be a good addition to an otherwise healthy lifestyle. Religion. So this is also, I think, surprising for some people that I'll talk about it. Religion being with religious views or beliefs about a higher power or God, that is associated with longevity as well. Now, the issue is that people who are religious also belong to some religious communities, which comes with a lot of these other confounding variables, such as you have a community, you have better mental health, you have friends in the community, you tend to follow some maybe healthier habits. You stop alcohol, you stop drugs, you stop other kind of vices or unhealthy lifestyles. So those are the things that can explain some of the association with religion and longevity. And of course, just the idea of a community and belonging to a group. So social health, mental health are very important. So I'll put it in the good tier. I don't think it's absolutely essential. I don't think, I think it might not be that causal. I think it's more about to do with the other things that come along with being religious, mainly being in a religious community. Next up, we have purpose. So similar to religion, it is associated with longevity. So people have a purpose. Usually the purpose is religion or faith. Is oftentimes also family or, a particular goal, job, community. Old park guard, he has the purpose of taking care of the park, those kind of things. Pets, those things, or just, whatever purpose of trying to be alive, etc. Having a purpose, I think, is God tier, because if you don't have a purpose, you don't want to live, you'll probably end up committing suicide or something like that. So just by virtue of that, purpose is a God tier. You need to have some purpose to live and to be alive. And, if you don't have a purpose, you're more likely to follow unhealthy lifestyles. You tend to be you just burn the candle a lot more. If you have a purpose, you need to take care of your friends or family, your children, your pets, your house, whatever it is, your country, your religion. It gives you a reason to be alive. I think that is a much more bigger. I think that's also like a contributor factor why religion might have association with longevity. Mindfulness. So similar to meditation, but mindfulness, you can be mindful with yoga. There's mindfulness yoga practices, mindfulness when you're making coffee, mindfulness when you're looking out of the window, mindfulness when you're talking to someone, just being in the present moment and paying attention has some brain benefits, in my opinion, stress benefits, anxiety benefits. So I do think that it's good. If you're unmindful in your life, then you tend to just kind of rush through the life. You'll be more stressed, you'll be more anxious, you'll make more worse decisions, etc. And having mindfulness is a useful thing in this context. Next up, intermittent fasting. So 16 and 8, warrior diet, time-restricted eating, all those things categorized here. So short-term fast, 12, 14, 16-hour fast, eating within a smaller window, usually skipping breakfast or skipping dinner. I think that is good. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary. There's plenty of evidence that intermittent fasting is good for your health. It's not going to be harmful. Some observational studies find that skipping breakfast is associated with higher heart disease or some mortality. But again, these are observation studies. And if you look at the cohorts, then usually the people who skip breakfast, they're smokers or they have some worse diet quality. If you're otherwise healthy, you skip breakfast, I think it's better to do early time restricted eating where you have an earlier dinner rather than super late dinner. But I think that is good. It's also a great way to achieve a more lower calorie intake without necessarily counting calories in the free world. Next up, we have a low calorie diet. So believing that calorie restriction extends lifespan and therefore eating a minimal amount of calories, basically eating 1,500 calories, 1,000 calories a day, just becoming super skinny and frail. I think that's bad. Actually, it's going to be worse than a carnivore diet, right? And it's going to be worse than one glass of alcohol. So I'll put it in the junk tier. So if you become too skinny, too frail, your risk of frailty and hip fractures is going to go up. So any potential life extension you might get from a very low calorie diet, you can just make up for it by breaking a hip and dying, right? So not the most suitable longevity diet to be chronically calorie restricted. And there are ways to mimic the calorie restriction without necessarily restricting the calories that much, such as intermittent fasting. It mimics calorie restriction to a certain extent, the same way with these different polyphenolic compounds, exercise, all those things have similar effects. The most important thing about the calorie restriction is to be relatively leaner. So looking at the studies on calorie restriction and life extension in animals, I think the best thing to take away from that is that you shouldn't be overweight, definitely not obese, but even not overweight, even not slightly chubby. Even that is going to be a bit worse. Now, of course, if you have low muscle and you're low weight, that's a risk for hip fractures, especially in older people. That's why you see older people are a little bit protected against dying if they are a bit overweight. But that's because they don't have any muscle. They don't lift weights, and therefore the fat tissue acts as like a small cushion that prevents them from breaking the hip when they fall. But if you have muscle, first of all, you're not going to fall, less likely to fall, and you're less likely to break a hip if you do fall because of the increased bone density from having the muscle and lifting weights. So you should, just because being slightly overweight is associated with reduced mortality in elderly people, that shouldn't be a justification to be fat or even overweight. You ideally want to be lower body fat with high bone density and muscle mass for both men and women. Although for women, it does appear to matter a lot less whether or not you're overweight or not. But for men, it absolutely matters quite a lot. Next up, if it fits your macros. So pretty much eating anything as long as it fits into your calorie balance and as long as you're not gaining weight. So let's say, think of it as a guy who has a six-pack, but they're eating donuts and pizza. So they're tracking their calories. They're not overeating calories, but they eat junk food. Now, I personally believe that the most important thing for overall health is the energy balance. So yes, you can have a slightly worse diet and be very healthy and live a long time, as long as you're not overweight and as long as you're not obese. Because diet, as I said, is not going to make you live 10 years longer if you have the perfect diet. It might add a little bit of extra years if you have a better diet than a worse diet, but diet is just not that effective. And that applies to exercise as well. Exercise isn't going to make you live 10 years longer. It might add a few extra years, but exercise, what it does is extend your health span. You're able to be independent, physically independent, and do your everyday stuff if you exercise because you're just stronger, faster, and more mobile. With diet, obviously it's not going to be God tier, it's not going to be good tier, it's not going to be okay tier. I think it's bad to do the if it fits your macros diet in terms of, let's say, longevity and maximal health span. But if it fits your diet, usually is followed by people who make sure they eat their protein, make sure they lift weights, and the only thing they do is, okay, I'm going to eat some donuts in my calorie balance. It's not the most optimal, but it's not the worst thing either, because these people otherwise get the protein. They might, get a multivitamin, or they might still eat some vegetables and stuff like that. But otherwise, they just squeeze in a little bit of, I guess you could call it junk food. Pet ownership. Now, pet ownership is associated with longevity. People who have pets are healthier. They live longer. It could be that if you have a dog, right, then you need to take the dog for walking. So you end up walking more. But it's also probably the mental health benefits. Like if you're a dog person, you just love dogs. If you're not a dog person, then you hate dogs, right? Then in that case, it's not a good thing. With cat ownership is associated with schizophrenia for some reason, which is why I don't like cats either. I'm a dog person for sure. So I wouldn't put it in the God tier because I don't think it's the absolute most important thing, but it's good. If you have pets, you like pets, then it's absolutely good for you. And an underrated component of having dogs or pets is actually the microbiome. You are living with a different species, you're exposed to a different microbiome, and the dog sniffs everywhere. The dog eat dirt, and they just get exposed to a lot of different types of bacteria when they're outside. They run around in the dirt and the mud. So it might be that also just it enriches your own microbiome in a certain sense. It might strengthen your immune system to have like an animal in your house, especially like a dog, which humans have co-evolved with for a long time. Yeah, marriage. So yeah, married people, they live longer. Married people tend to be healthier as well and happier. So there's a myth that marriage shortens your lifespan, or having a spouse is going to be bad for you. Now, of course, if it's a toxic relationship, it's an abusive relationship, then of course you should get out of that. If it's the case, and otherwise, healthy marriage, healthy relationship is net positive for your health in terms of mental health, social health, potentially physical health as well. For men, at least, it appears to matter a lot more again. marriage is a lot more protective for male longevity than it is for female longevity for some reason. And I think it's because, if you have a wife, then you might eat healthier a little bit. The wife might cook you better food. As a man, you'll just eat sausages and bacon or something. So you'll end up eating a little bit better, healthier food, home-cooked foods, because you're more likely to eat them. And potentially the wife is also more conscientious when it comes to medications and pharmaceuticals. So they'll tell you to take your medications. Men don't usually go to the doctor. They get a chest pain for 2 weeks. They're not going to go to the doctor. Whereas the woman will go immediately to the doctor. So if you have a wife, then the wife will tell you to go to the doctor or persuade you to go to the doctor. Or if you do get a heart attack as a man, there's going to be someone who calls the ambulance, etc. So there's these are the reasons probably why, or contributing factors why marriage is associated with longevity. Plus, obviously, there's sexual activity, which appears to be beneficial for health. Physical health is a low form of cardiovascular exercise and good for mental health and social health. So there's all these things that would put it in the gut tier. Next up, ice bath. So taking an ice bath, winter swimming, maybe not cold shower. A cold shower is not as effective as an ice bath. So I'll put it's okay. I think taking an ice bath every once in a while is going to be fine for your health. You probably get some health benefits, immune strengthening benefits. But based on the research, first of all, there's not that much research about this. And second of all, it's arguably that the sauna is a lot better for your health than the ice bath. First of all, there's more research about the sauna, and the mechanistic studies also suggest that the sauna is a lot healthier for you. For elderly people, one of the leading causes of death is hypothermia, low body temperature. So as a young person, ice baths are great for strengthening your immune system. As an older person, sauna is a lot better, in my opinion. Having children. So based on the evidence, people who have children live longer, they're happier, more purpose in life, etc. So all these things contribute to here. How many children? I think the limit was, at least the few studies that I've seen on the topic, is something like 8 children is like the limit. And after that, for females, it appears to be bad for longevity. So there's a difference between men and women. For men, there's no, as many children as you can get. Not that it's better, but having higher amounts of children is again more beneficial for men. But for women, if you have more than 8 children, then that just a burden of pregnancy, not a burden. It's not a burden, but it's, physical stress, a small amount of physical stress. You see the biological age is increasing during pregnancy in women because of many changes in hormones and just, having another human inside you. All those things do appear to wear down the female body after a certain point. And that limit might be maybe 8 children, 4 children, 6 children. Not exactly sure, probably differences between people. But having 1, 2, 3 children is definitely a net positive for your health and longevity. And when you're very old, there's going to be people who take care of you. You'll have a source of meaning and happiness. So yeah, I got tier thing for longevity. Social health, also absolutely got tier. You shouldn't neglect your social health, friends, family. And these things do associate with longevity and living longer. Loneliness, social isolation, they are associated with heart disease and other poor health outcomes. Now, of course, there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. There's people who are introverted, people who are extroverted. So the amount of socialization and loneliness varies between people, what's needed or what's harmful. But some social interactions and relationships are, let's say for 99% of people, it's going to be beneficial. For some very rare cases, individuals, they're going to be fine without social interactions. But the vast majority of people will benefit from them. Next up, play and fun. So having fun, which I do think is very important. So just enjoying and not being chronically stressed out, not working all the time, just enjoying and having some fun I think it's important for these various reasons. Mental health also got here, super important. If you're depressed, suicidal, obviously that can lead to a quick shortening of lifespan. And happiness and life satisfaction, lowers cortisol, lowers anxiety, just keeps your physiology also healthier if you're happier. Extended fasting, so fasting 48 hours, 72 hours, 100 hours, 7 days, as long as you can go. Extended fasting, I like fasting. I think has a lot of benefits. Extended fasting is the one that has potential downside, especially muscle loss, frailty, malnourishment, those kind of things. Now, if you do a 72-hour fast once a month, or once a year you do a 7-day fast or 5-day fast, whatever your protocol is, I don't think it's inherently harming your health, but it's also probably not needed for your health, right? So you can achieve a lot of health benefits by just doing the regular intermittent fasting and maybe throwing an occasional 48, 72-hour fast in there. So I'll put it in okay tier. Now, it could be bad. Yeah, also, I'll actually put it in the bad. So you can potentially see a fast net negative on your health if you just fast too long and fast too often. But, these, let's say potential benefits like increased autophagy, cell clearance, lower inflammation, digestive break, gut healing, those things are all valid. So it depends on the length of the fast. I guess I should have differentiated a bit. Like a 48-hour fast, I think it's good. Like a pretty fast weight loss thing, not too long to lose muscle. 72-hour fast is also probably okay. 7-day fast, I think is bad. So it depends on the range. So I'll put it in the bad tier because I'm running out of space here actually, but I'll also put it in the bad tier because 7-day fast, I think, has not things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve from a exercise program. Some intermittent fasting, lower calorie intake in terms of just losing weight and being in a calorie deficit for multiple weeks, for example. Forest bathing, so spending time in a forest or natural environment. So this is popularized in Japan. Shinrin-yoku is it's called. And I do think that more depends on the individual. Some people just like urban environments. Other people like natural forest environments. If you're in a forest environment, you have cleaner air, you're more grounded, different essential oils in the air, different microbiome, bacteria that you inhale, that's good for your immune system. So spending time around trees, I think, is very healthy for you. Not for the mental health, even just for the physical health as well. So I'll put it in the good tier. But if you just live in a city, you're otherwise healthy, then I think that's gonna be fine as well. Maybe having some houseplants in your apartment, that should still be a good idea. Fasting mimicking diet. So this is you eat something like 500, 600 calories for, I think it's a few days or up to a week, and then you refeed. So this idea is that it mimics extended fasting by keeping your IGF-1 and insulin and glucose levels lower, which theoretically, could work because, it's not that, your body has a kind of a detector that any amount of calories immediately breaks the fast or switch you over to a fed state. Now, the fasting mimicking diet has its own limitations and flaws. There's, there is quite a lot of studies on fasting mimicking diet, but I don't think that it's needed. Walter Longo, who created it, he made it so that people can lower their IGF-1 specifically. That's what he's focused most on, the lower IGF-1 without extended fasting and without suffering the hunger pains from extended fasting. So I don't think it's good. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's okay because of that. Juice fasting. So juice fasting is bad because if you're just eating sugar and high amounts of carbohydrates while you're not eating enough protein and while you're in a calorie deficit, then you're just going to lose a lot of muscle. Or potentially you're going to lose more muscle if you were to do even like a protein sparing modified fast. And you don't need to drink tons of juices and vegetables, smoothies to gain health benefits. Like you could eat like a normal amount of these things on a regular diet and lose the weight in other ways. Dry fasting, so things like Ramadan or just not drinking water for a similar amount of time as with regular intermittent fasting, like 16 hours, 10, 12 hours, whatever the window is, I think it's okay. I mean, there are some benefits to mild dehydration, periodic dehydration. It increases heat acclimation. It increases dehydration acclimation, essentially that you're able to go longer times of periods of time without drinking and without hydration. But it's mostly useful for sports performance, that during sports performance, you are obviously going to be more dehydrated. You're also going to be hotter. So your body can tolerate the exercise and the heat a bit more if you're dehydration acclimated. The other health benefits, it's obviously a bit more limited. Ramadan fasting studies do suggest that, it's providing similar health benefits as intermittent fasting, but it also has negative effects on sleep and HRV, probably because you eat a lot of food before bed. So the exact way of doing the Ramadan is probably not the most optimal, because you eat more food before bed and it's not the best for the circadian rhythm. So if you were to do Ramadan fasting, then actually flipping it the other way around, that you don't drink any water from, let's say a few hours before bed until a few hours after waking up, and only eating during the daytime. So the flip of the Ramadan will actually be the more circadian rhythm optimized version of dry fasting. Protein restriction, so deliberately restricting protein, and I'm not talking about, eating the RDA of protein, which is considered just, the bare minimum requirement for survival. And I'm not talking about eating, 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. So protein restriction, specifically eating, let's say, only 5-10% of the calories as protein. So a little less than the RDA. I think that is absolute junk there, because especially if you eat lower than the RDA, then over time you will just lose muscle tissue. And that's going to be bad for your long-term survival and long-term frailty risk. Now, the idea that protein restriction extends lifespan, yes, in animal studies it does so, but obviously protein is needed. You still need some amount of protein for survival. Hot baths. So jacuzzi or steam hot bath. Now, there's some recent studies showing that the hot baths provide similar benefits to the sauna, because they raise your body temperature similar to the sauna, and the benefits of the sauna come from a higher body temperature. So hot baths can lower inflammation, they can support your immune system, they can relax you. All those similar effects you get from the sauna might improve circulation. So I think the hot baths are good. The only issue is that they're bad for sperm health. So obviously saunas can also be bad for sperm health because of the heat, but the hot baths are especially so bad because your testicles are immersed in the hot water, so you can't escape it. You can't use an ice pack in the hot bath. So for males, especially, the hot bath is not the best. But for females, I think they can actually be very good ways to mimic the benefits of the sauna. I do think the sauna, your heart rate goes a lot higher than the hot bath in the sauna. So you're not going to get the full cardio benefits from a hot bath, because otherwise you burn your skin if it's too hot. So there's a limit how you can tolerate in a hot bath, but you can tolerate a lot higher temperatures in the sauna. Next up, time restricted eating. So this is God tier, because what it means, time restricted eating, is eating, I guess, more like a diurnal creature, which are humans. We eat in the daytime and we sleep at night. So what it means is not eating at nighttime and not eating too close to bed, and consuming your food during the biological daytime for humans. So that's why it's God tier. It keeps your circadian rhythms aligned and prevents you from having worse sleep. Circadian mismatch. So this is jet lag or shift work. From health perspective, I think it's bad. So you can still pull it off. You can still be otherwise healthy. You can still have good body composition, you can exercise, you can eat a good diet, you can get otherwise normal amounts of sleep, like 7-8 hours. But the only thing is that, you do shift work, or you have a lot of, let's say, jet lag, you travel a lot of different time zones all the time. So it's bad, but it's not completely harming your health like smoking. You can definitely pull it off, so to say. It's not good for you, absolutely, but you can make it work. Sleep consistency, going to bed, waking up around the same time. I think, yes, there is a strong relationship between sleep consistency and better health, even more so than the total sleep duration. But I would suggest that the sleep consistency is not the most important thing. The most important thing is still getting an optimal amount of sleep, even if you go to bed slightly at different times. So let's say you go to bed 1 to 2 hours difference in that time frame. Chronic stress, so that's bad. Smoking is worse for you than chronic stress, in my opinion. Or actually, no, I'll take it back. Chronic stress is, very bad. I'll put it in the junk tier because, it ages you a lot. People who've gone through some traumatic, stressful experiences, you look at presidents, even they age super fast when they go into the office. And after 4 years, they've aged quite a lot. So, chronic stress can accelerate aging significantly. Junk food, so McDonald's, burgers, deep fried food is junk tier, but keep in mind the if it fits your macros idea. If you eat some junk food in the if it fits your macros context, then it's bad for you, but it's not the end of the world compared to just eating junk food without limits, like a standard person, without any restriction on the calories, and also gaining weight. Water filtration, so using some sort of a filtration for your water, reverse osmosis filter or some Berkeley filter. I think water filtration is god tier. So if you have just a ton of heavy metals in your drinking water, different other pollutants in your drinking water, then that's bad for your health. Absolutely. Air filtration, I also think, is god tier. If you have house mold, then that's super bad for your health. Smoke, air pollution, outdoors pollution, I think it's bad. It's not the worst in terms of compared to smoking, for example. You can make it work. Outdoor pollution is not the best thing for your health either, but if you filter your air, then that's, I think, god tier, especially in countries or cities where it's higher air pollution. Sitting lifestyle, so spending a lot of time sitting, in the car, office, whatever. Now, it's bad for you, but if you exercise otherwise, you can make it work, right? So, I'm not going to judge people for sitting at the work, but if you don't exercise and you are otherwise overweight and obese, then the sitting is just compounding the negative effects. Next up, sleep 7 to 8 hours, I think, is god tier. So that's the recommended amount of sleep. The studies do suggest that 7 hours is associated with the lowest mortality. But I think a safe bet is 7 to 8 hours, because chances are you're not having the most optimal perfect sleep. So compensating for some of that with a higher sleep duration, like 7 to 8 hours, is, I think, a worthwhile decision. Regular blood tests, so measuring your lipids, blood sugar, inflammation on a semi-annual basis or annual basis, semi-quarterly basis, whatever your protocol is, I think it's good. Obviously, it can be god tier if you, there's the cost element. Obviously, it's going to be costly if you test very frequently, but I think that, once a year doing some blood test is a very good idea to see what is your inner health, what's your biomarkers, what are the things you need to improve on, and what are the things you're doing, how do those things affect your health. Continuous glucose monitoring, so using the CGM to see your blood sugar response to different foods, plus the idea of trying to manage your glucose curves and keep them in the lower end to not have huge spikes. I think it's good. I don't think it's as important as the regular blood tests, so I'll put it okay. So if you do it, that's fine. You don't even need to do it. It's just kind of useful educational experiment, but it's not absolutely mandatory, or it's not something as important as doing your exercise or something like that. Next up, we have exercise snacks. So these are these vigorous exercise snacks where you run up the stairs for 1 minute, jumping jacks for 1 minute, whatever it is, just to get your heart rate elevated for 1 minute throughout the day. So that you're sitting, you do a sprint every hour, for example. I think those are good. Breaking up the periods of sitting is more important than just exercising once a day and then sitting for the rest of the day. So obviously it's better to have a decent workout plan than to not have one. So I think the snacks are a good way to make up for some long periods of sitting. Standing work desk. So I personally love my standing work desk. I think it just, first of all, no problems with hips or back or anything like that. If you're sitting a lot, you might get some back pain or knee pain or hip pain. If you get a standing desk or a saddle chair or with a walking treadmill, it really has a positive effect on your joint health. Now, it doesn't have that much benefit on metabolic health. It's a little bit more metabolically active than sitting, but if you're sitting and you're doing the Soleus pushups, then that's more metabolically active. So better for your blood sugar and stuff compared to just standing still. So just standing still is better than just sitting, but it's not as good as doing something like a Soleus pushup or a walking treadmill. So I'll put it okay at tier. I like it, but it's not the most important thing. Nasal breathing got tier, so better sleep, better energy levels, just better aesthetics as well. Super important to do that. Breathing exercises, so some sort of hyperventilation, Wim Hof breathing, whatever, box breathing, etc. I think they're okay. So if someone who, it depends. Yeah, if someone has some stress and anxiety, then they can use these things for managing these stressful situations. I don't think they're absolutely inherently needed. If you are able to control your breath doing cardio or HIIT training, then that's actually a very good form of breathing exercises without necessarily doing them. So I think they're okay. Next up, recreational drugs. So party drugs, stuff like that. Junk tier, absolutely harming your health. No real safe amount of them, in my opinion. Next up, weed. I also think that it's it's obviously smoking, so it's still junk tier in terms of that. You're still inhaling smoke, although you're not inhaling the same type of tobacco or these other kind of chemicals in the regular cigarettes, but you're still inhaling smoke. Now, some people use it for relaxation or something like that, but arguably it's better for you than alcohol, but I don't really think so. Some people say that it's better for you than alcohol, but I really don't think so. Peptides, so BPC, whatever other type of peptides there are. So I think this is a very problematic category because depends what peptides or where do you source them from and who are you using them on. So there's no peptide that actually will significantly extend your lifespan. And I have not seen significant studies on peptides also extending animal lifespan. So there's obviously some peptides supporting with various conditions like joint function and inflammation and potentially sleep and brain health or muscle growth or fat loss, etc. I mean, they're not bad. Obviously, it depends if where do you source them from. Every kind of bad quality peptide can be bad, but I'll put them in the okay tier. So because of lack of evidence, HRT, TRT. So hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy. So using these hormones in more physiological quantities. So not using very high doses of testosterone, not using very high doses of hormones. So at a certain age, it's going to be significantly beneficial. So after the age of 60, it's definitely going to be quite useful for women. HRT appears to be quite beneficial. There's this fear mongering about HRT being bad for breast cancer, which is not really the case. TRT as well, there's no evidence that it increases prostate cancer risk or something like that. But the issue is that a lot of people use TRT and they end up taking more than they actually need. So they end up taking larger doses because the larger doses make them feel better. They build more muscle. They lower fat more. So it's a fine line between actual doing TRT and doing too much when it comes to testosterone. Low testosterone levels are associated with shorter lifespan in older men. Older men with higher testosterone are healthier and they live a bit longer. But with testosterone, it's not a maximal lifespan hormone. So if you have super high testosterone, then you're probably gonna live shorter. If you have lower testosterone, then you might live shorter as well because of increased risk of diabetes and obesity and other problems. But if you have normal testosterone, like I think normal testosterone is probably the most suitable for maximal lifespan for males. Super high testosterone probably accelerates aging because androgens are more pro-aging. They increase risk of heart disease more than estrogens, for example. You also have some protective effects from testosterone, but in a more like physiological dose. So I'll put it in a good tier because for quality of life, for sure, it's going to be quite effective at a certain age, let's say over 50 for males and females. It would be more net positive for younger than that. I don't think if you start HRT and testosterone therapy very early, then I think that's not the most suitable for maximal lifespan. But at a certain age, you use these TRT and HRT to bring your physiology back to a more normal state, as opposed to staying in a more suboptimal aged state, which further accelerates aging. If you're like below baseline, then you're easily going to dive deeper into a lower baseline. Whereas if you prevent yourself from going into the lower baseline, you pick yourself up, then you can maintain better health. So it's the kind of, health is kind of this, that if you're healthy, then it's easier to stay healthy. If you're unhealthy, then it's harder to become healthy, and it's also harder to get out of the unhealthiness. If you're healthy, you can do unhealthy things for a little bit and still be as healthy as you were before. It's kind of this rich get richer and poor get poorer situation, but in your physiology. The same way with hormones, as you get older, if you experience these low hormones, then you can end up becoming unhealthier over time. But if you bring yourself back up to normal state, then you can mitigate that. Next up, sleep 4 to 6 hours. So unless you have these super short sleeper genes, then it's going to be bad for your health. Now, deliberately restricting your sleep to 4 to 6 hours, I think, is junk tier. It's worse for you than jet lag. It's worse for you than having a glass of wine per night. So definitely, unless you have these short sleep genes, then chances are you're harming your health. Stem cell therapy. Now, again, we don't have that much evidence. I'm just using it here because it's popular, so I'll put it okay tier. It's hard to say how impactful it will be for longevity and lifespan. It probably will have some benefits. It probably will do more than zero. It's just hard to say how much. Again, it might be good for some individuals with certain specific issues, but I wouldn't say that it's absolutely mandatory for all people. Now, it might be that in 20 years' time, even 15 years, 10 years' time, everyone will be using stem cells. Maybe that's going to be the case because it's a low-hanging fruit we know might make a dent in human longevity. But we don't know necessarily how much. Team sports. So I do think it's got here. It has the social element. It has the kind of athleticism element, playing basketball, soccer, volleyball, whatever the sport is. This trains your body in a different way than just going to the gym. So it's a very beneficial sport to do every kind of different new movements and just unpredictable movements. Plus there's the social element. Now, steroid cycle is going to be junk tier. So steroid cycle, tren, anavar, whatever things, more using anabolics in larger doses, supraphysiological doses. So that definitely accelerates aging and shortens lifespan, as a lot of bodybuilders do die younger in their 30s, 40s if they abuse steroids a lot. Grounding, I think grounding is good, but it's not absolutely necessary. Some people are more sensitive to EMFs and stuff like that. I don't think that you need to ground like, all the time and every day. It's kind of nice to just, ground yourself, but I don't think it's the most absolute important thing for most people. Mouth taping. So if you are mouth breathing, then it's good. If you're not mouth breathing, then you don't need to really do it. If you're already breathing through the nose in your sleep, then I see little to no extra added value to mouth taping. I guess the only thing is that it's insurance that you will actually sleep and breathe through the nose. Artificial sweeteners. So aspartame, acesulfame K, and it depends on the sweetener. So stevia is much different than aspartame. I mean, they're not health promoting, right? They're not improving your health. But if you're consuming artificial sweetened beverages instead of actual sugar sweetened beverages, then they can be useful ways to lose weight and prevent yourself from going down the deep end with sugar sweetened beverages, for example. So they can be useful for appetite suppression and stuff like that. Now, I don't really believe that there's evidence that drinking Diet Coke or something will give you cancer or diabetes. I think that's very weak evidence. First of all, the quantities are way off. You have to consume significant amount of these diet beverages. I'm talking about 10, 20 cans of Diet Coke per day, even more than that probably. And second of all, just the overall, the diet component is what matters a lot more. If you're using something like stevia, then stevia, I mean, it might have some negative side effects, mostly like nausea. You just don't, you're not going to feel good if you drink 5 cans of some stevia sweetened beverage. You're just going to feel off. So that's like a self-limiting factor already. If you drink 1-2 cans of some stevia sweetened beverage, then you're probably just going to be fine. So I'll put them in the okay tier. I don't think they're, so if you have some gut problems, then yes, they can make it worse. If you don't have gut problems, there's nothing that would indicate that they're harmful for otherwise healthy people. And the last absolute thing is being a hypochondriac. So hypochondria, ties in with the artificial sweeteners and a lot of other things here. If you're just super worried about your health, you're like, oh my God, this or that, air pollution, oh my God, seed oils, oh my God, EMF, 5G, if you're just super scared and stressed out about all the potential harmful things in your surroundings and just, I'm afraid of being unhealthy, I'm afraid that this is going to shorten my lifespan, then, it's definitely bad for your health. Now, of course, being a hypochondriac to a certain extent is healthy. So you read the labels more, you're not going to eat foods that have a bunch of different processed chemicals or like processed ingredients. You're more careful with, cleaning your air, filtering your air. So yes, being a healthy hypochondriac in a healthy amount can be good for you. But in this context, I'm just talking about a person who's afraid of everything. Every little thing. They listen to a podcast, or I need to add a new thing to my list of things I need to worry about. So this is definitely not bad for you. It creates chronic stress. It creates anxiety. But there's a certain amount of it that can be healthy. So I think Einstein has a quote that, the most important decision you make is believing whether or not the universe is good or bad for you, or is doing good for you or bad for you, something along those lines. Yeah, if you believe that everything is bad for you, then you're just going to it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to notice the bad things more, and you're just chronically stressed out and super worried. You'll sleep worse, you have higher heart rate, higher blood pressure. It's just a vicious cycle. And if you believe things that, okay, some things are bad, I need to be aware of some potential things, like I'm not going to go breathe in smog in the rush hour if I don't have to, or, I'm not going to take unregulated and potentially dangerous some sort of interventions. Those things are things to be hypochondriac about in a healthy sense. But don't be super neurotic about it, I guess, is the main message. So there you have it. This is the ultimate health tier list of the year. And I think it's a pretty good list. In the God tier, you walk 8 to 12,000 steps, do mobility, HIIT, calisthenics, some plyometrics, get your circadian rhythm light optimized, keep your brain engaged, do some social and mental health activities, filter your air and water deep enough, breathe through the nose. Other things you can add to your stack, things like zone 2, regular blood tests, walk more, meditate, take a nap, intermittent fasting, get a dog, force baiting. Okay things. These are kind of experimental things. Can be good for you, but not necessarily bad for you either. Bad things, being very sedentary, being a hypochondriac, 1 glass per night of alcohol, juice fasting, circadian mismatch, and things to absolutely avoid: polyphasic sleep, steroids, recreational drugs, sleep restriction, mouth breathing, chronic stress, smoking, all those things kind of things. All right, so thanks for watching this video. Check out my other video where I ranked 100 supplements from worst to best, so it kind of follows the same theme. Make sure to click like and subscribe as well.